Modern food makes us sick because it is devoid of life. And so today I'm going to be talking about a huge topic, which is the nutrient depletion of our food in modern day. And so this is massive because we know that there's a huge epidemic of obesity, of chronic disease. 70% of people have at least one chronic disease. It's increasing among younger people too: obesity, fatty liver disease, early cancers, developmental disorders. Toddlers are developing later. All these things that are affecting everyone's health. And health to me is one of the most important things: the health of myself and the health of those that I love, because I want to be able to move however I want as I age. I want to be able to think my best, think clearly up into my 80s and 90s and 100s. I believe that's 100% possible, and especially going to be possible in the future. And given how bad our current food system is, about what I want to talk about, I only think of such a good future where it's so easy for people to be healthy because it's just the natural flow of life, and it's just how our system, our food system, our schooling, our work, it's all set up that way to make us healthier and have a lot better lives. So I think there's so much optimism for the future of how good humanity could be, in the United States and around the world. So talking about nutrient degradation, the first thing we have to understand is, what is food? A lot of people don't understand what food actually is. So you take any food, whether it's an apple, whether it's a piece of broccoli or a steak from a cow. It has macronutrients, which is fat, protein, fiber. Alcohol is also a macronutrient, but don't drink that. Then you have micronutrients, which is vitamins and minerals. And then you have phytonutrients. And a lot of people don't know what phytonutrients are, but they are kind of bioavailable nutrients in plant foods, so fruits and vegetables. And they have super beneficial effects on the human body. They kind of work by being kind of defense chemicals in foods. It's not like lectins and pectins and oxalates in that way, but they kind of are little things that, kind of stress our bodies and therefore make us stronger. It's really cool. There's so many that are useful. There's carotenoids, polyphenols, chlorophyll, so many great phytonutrients, and a lot of people don't know about them. And then you have water, and water usually carries a lot of these within these plant foods. It's intracellular water, water that's in the cell. So that's what food is. And so then we get to how our nutrients in our foods have depleted in the last mostly century, but maybe past few centuries, and especially recent decades. The biggest one to start with is soil health. So soil health includes all these things: industrial farming, synthetics, breeding and diversity, and GMO. So industrial farming is what has been the norm over the past 100 years, and it's described by monocropping, which is putting one crop in the same place over and over and over; tilling, it's called tilling, which digs up the soil and roughs it up way too much than it naturally does, because they literally cut it to then put the seeds in and cover it back up. And this is bad because the overarching theme of why soil health is so important is because all of these things that we get from food come from the soil. And if the soil isn't healthy and it's devoid of these, then these nutrients are not going to show up in our food. So what industrial farming was, and the biggest example of this is during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, because they were just monocropping and doing all these things, and the topsoil got so depleted and it just became dirt. People think soil is just dirt. It's not dirt. It's a whole ecosystem full of biodiversity. And in the 1930s, in the Dust Bowl, all this dust just came up because there was no, structure and integrity within the soil. And so the soil has obviously vitamins and minerals in it. It has all these phytonutrients from the biodiversity of the soil, with the worms going through and all the roots and just all the little microbes within soil. Same as in our gut, how we have a bunch of microbes in our gut that we want to feed with healthy bacteria and fiber from fruits and vegetables. So does the soil. And so industrial farming really messes that up. Then you have synthetics. So pesticides, herbicides, and unnatural fertilizers. Just because we figured out how to get, chemical fertilizers that replaced some nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, and replaced some of these, it did not replace the majority of minerals and vitamins in the soil. So we're still depleted of that, but it allowed, big quantities of fruits and vegetables to still be created. And then pesticides and herbicides, we know from, DDT in the past, as well as currently using glyphosate and things of that sort that are not beneficial to the environment at all or to humans. They actually are poisonous. And so we obviously want to try to get that out of our food supply as much as humanly possible, because it goes into our body and, affects our gut, which then gives us chronic inflammation and leads to a whole bunch of different cascading effects. And it's so hard because, as you'll learn as I explain, like, there's so many different aspects of this, and it's all degrading our body and our health. And so it's not just a one quick fix type thing. It's really changing our food supply. But I'm just explaining this to you so that you guys understand. And so, a lot of people say like, oh, they have a good diet, but like, do you really, with, the types of foods you're eating? And then even if you're eating like healthy foods, there's going to be less nutrition in it, as we're seeing here. And so there are things you can do, which I'll share at the end of this video. Then you have breeding and diversity. So basically right now there's 4 massive seed companies in the world that supply, most of the world's seeds. And they've breeded these seeds over many, iterations of planting and growing these crops to make them higher yield and more resistant to pesticides and herbicides, not necessarily more nutrient dense. And so when you make the yields higher, you're using synthetic fertilizers, the soil is depleted of nutrients. All you're getting is bigger foods, but not more nutrients. Like, you're getting bigger tomatoes, bigger apples, bigger grapes, but you're not getting more nutrition. You're actually getting less. And so even now, like, people are eating more and more foods, and if they're whole foods, you're not getting as much nutrition as, say, like your grandparents did. And then that also leads to less diversity. So like 100, 200, 300 years ago, there were thousands of different types of apples. Now there's only like 10 to 15. And that's ubiquitous across all crops. The diversity is decreasing so much, which again decreases the biodiversity of the soil and all the microbes in there, and also makes us get less diversity in our own diets, and therefore, less nutrients, because these foods have different amounts of different nutrients in them, and we need kind of all of them together to function healthy and properly. Then you have GMO, which is genetically modified organisms. And I think these can be positive. Like, the world of science is so cool. GMOs can be good, but right now they're put in like everything, and I don't personally trust it. Like, the same way I right now would not genetically modify my own genes, I would not genetically modify our food. Who knows what that does? They're usually genetically modifying them to do the same thing that they're doing with breeding, make them bigger, make them grow faster, make them have more resistance to pesticides and herbicides. But again, that's not making them more nutritious. And who knows what messed up genes and the alteration of nature does to the human body. Again, I think it can be really useful in the future, possibly, if breakthroughs happen and more studies come out about, more quality studies about it. But right now, it's just not something that I trust. And so that's also, when you genetically modify and take it away from nature, it's going to impact the health of the soil. Just in the fact that, they're bigger and not getting as many nutrients. So it's just not natural for the soil. So that's kind of what I depicted here in this nice little drawing. But then, so that's just soil health and how messed up that is in the past 100, 200 years. Then we get to processing. So already our foods have a lot less nutrition. And there are certain studies about this that you can find online where, they looked at historical records of how much specific nutrients foods had in them from like the 1950s all the way to like the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. And you find major decreases percentage-wise in nutrients in foods and nutrient density, throughout all crops, between like 50 to at least 10% for many plants, as in fruits and vegetables, like tomatoes, all these fruits and vegetables have decreased a lot of their vitamins and minerals. And then obviously phytonutrients, they're not really tracking that, but it's given and granted to happen because of the loss of biodiversity in the soil. Um, and oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about with water, with all the stuff in water nowadays, in terms of how it's been polluted in many ways, with not only, harmful substances, but hormones and things like that too. And then we get to processing. So we already have less nutrition, and then we go and process it through all of these, big, massive factories. Why? Why do we want to do this to our food? We want our food to just be whole. And then minor processing of, butter, maybe some maple syrup, like filtering stuff for like honey. That's good processing, but washing, but you don't want to be doing some of the stuff higher up on the Nova scale, leading to like ultra processed foods. But when you process and you expose these foods to light, you expose them to heat, oxygen, you mill them, you refine them, you separate their different parts into fats and sugars and um, proteins and carbs, you're taking away the natural part of the foods, and the nutrients get lost in those processes. Light, oxidation, heat, like many vitamins and minerals are sensitive to those, and therefore you lose them in the processing. Also, when you dehydrate foods, take out the water, water often carries a lot of the phytonutrients and regular micronutrients in these foods, and so you're getting a lot less nutrition that way. The water in fruits and vegetables is so cool. When I'm at school, I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, and I don't drink anything during my meals because I get so much water in my body just from the fruits and vegetables that I'm eating. Like I'm not thirsty during my meals. It's pretty cool. And the foods that I'm eating at school are not the, most healthiest grown, and not using herbicides and pesticides, and they're probably GMO, but you just want to try to do the best that you can with where you are. And I'll talk a lot about that later in this video. So the processing makes you lose out on more nutrition. So the soil is bad, you're not getting as much nutrients in the whole foods. You're then processing them, unnaturally altering them, and losing more of the nutrition. I'm just thinking like, and then some people microwave their stuff and then just fry the nutrients out of it. But so then we get to added ingredients. We all know about the, ingredients that these big, massive food companies have artificially created and added into a bunch of foods. It's cool when you look at, well, it's actually not cool, but it's interesting when you look into the history of these massive food corporations and these food scientists, because, back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, the biggest companies in the US were cigarette companies. Everyone smoked cigarettes. But then the Surgeon General of the US came out and said that, they're bad for you and they cause cancer. And so these cigarette companies, these massive companies were like, oh shit, like what do we do? And they ended up buying and merging in with all these food companies, and they just moved their scientists who made the cigarettes, taste better, smell better, take longer to fire out when you light them, not be as gooey and weird. Like all these massive cigarette companies needed these scientists to make cigarettes better. They just moved those scientists to trying to make food better and trying to make food as addictive as possible and as, good on your senses as possible. And so they created all these artificial things, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors, gums, stabilizers. What else they had? It's a crazy amount of things. I mean, it's terrible. Then you have specific ingredients. So they just separate the foods in the processing into flour, sugar, seed oils, fats, trans fats, these bad things, and then they just combine it together to make foods that aren't even real. Like these bars and things that people eat, they're not it's not even real food. You're taking parts of real food and putting it together, and it's losing all of its nutrition along the process. And that's what I'm talking about here with unnatural proportions. You put unnatural proportions of high fat and high carbs, things that our ancestors and our evolutionary biology has not been designed for. Maybe we would find a bee honey, a honey hive, a beehive, and eat all the honey, but we wouldn't eat all the honey right when we kill a big fat pig. Like you don't eat them at the same time. Um, but nowadays we do, with just how unnatural it is. And so that's the big overarching reason why our food is so devoid of health. And the big thing is food is so much of our health. It's like, I would say, at least 70% of our health as humans. Affects all the things in our body. And so when we're not getting all these nutrients to support our body and its functions, our metabolism is just gonna, not work as well. And it's gonna cause widespread inflammation from messing up our gut and things of that sort. And so this is why I'm so big on eating very healthy and trying to eat as close to natural as possible. And so what does that look like? Well, in terms of soil health, the best thing that we can do is regenerative farming or wild farming. So not wild farming, but like scavenging. People in the mountains, they have all these diverse plants and they just eat from those plants, and it's completely wild. Like, that's so cool. Obviously, we don't we don't need to live like that, but regenerative farming is the best way to farm, to keep soil diversity high, not kill all these. Like, it's better for the environment and it's better for us. Also, I didn't even talk about how all this food that is devoid of nutrients and full of pesticides, we then feed to animals in industrial, like, animal farms, where they're all together and it's gross and it's not sanitary, and these pigs and cows and chickens are just fat. They don't even see the sun. Like, it's so unnatural. They're eating an unnatural diet of just soy and corn and wheat. And they're getting sick. The cows are getting sick. That's why they have to feed them antibiotics and hormones. And it's just not what we should be doing as a society. And obviously you can't get rid of fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers and pesticides right away, but it's something you can phase out. Like, we should focus way more as a society on putting our innovation in technology into how to make nature more available to us, how to farm better, how to, quickly move food to grocery stores locally so that people can get it same day once it's been picked. And like, these are things that are actually happening across the entire country right now and in other places in the world. And we just don't put enough effort into it. We put it into these medications that just put a band-aid on the problem. They don't fix anything at the, fundamental level. And that's a whole other story about how the healthcare system doesn't actually want to cure anyone. They just want to keep everyone sick so they can keep profiting, and how it was made by these, massive billionaires in the 1900s who created all of the schools and all of the literature for these doctors to go through and what they learned. But anyways, if we put all of our, as a society, work on what we do in terms of, medicine with these medications and pills into trying to figure out how to best farm, best transfer it to our stores, and best get it onto our tables and cook and educate people about this type of stuff, our world would be flipped on its head. People would be so much healthier, and it just would be so much better for the world in general and the economy. And yeah, so that's something I'm advocating for. But so regenerative farming, eating locally is always better. It's less things are going to happen. It's going to travel less, see the sun less, get less oxidized, be less, shown to different temperatures, whether it's heat and cold. That's something I'm trying to do. Try to buy from, local farms as much as I can. Try to get to know the farmers, know what they use, develop a relationship with them, and, reward the people who are growing food properly and correctly by, buying from them. Obviously, Eating whole foods gets rid of this whole processing thing, and buying from, brands that you truly uh, trust. That's going to be a huge thing in our society, is like who you actually trust now. Um, and yeah, if you just eat whole foods, you're avoiding unnatural proportions, specific ingredients, artificial, sweeteners, flavors, stabilizers, gums, things that will just go through your uh, gut and just tear you up and cause inflammation. And so that is why our current and modern food is so devoid of nutrition. And because it's devoid of nutrition, it's therefore devoid of life. We are full of these things, and that's how we live. It's kind of amazing when you think of how consciousness is made from, a bunch of rocks and water and these little specks of life. How do you even get life? How do you even get consciousness? It's so amazing. And we're not treating it with care. We're not being respectful of, our biology and the gift that we've been given from the universe, from God. So eat a lot healthier as much as you can. Learn more about this stuff, and your body and your loved ones and everyone you pass it down to will thank you.